And now you got this person here. See, I see you put this back up.
Yeah, I want to play it again so we can discuss.
The Prime Minister of Finland, who is another neocon, and she's been one of the biggest cheerleaders for this war, and one of the biggest cheerleaders for getting Finland into NATO, despite promises to the Russian people. Sana Marin, like she might as well be John McCain with how much she wants to escalate war with Russia. But go ahead, CJ. I'll pass to you. I know you want to chime in.
I want to play this again because essentially the message is Ukraine. The message I'm getting is that Ukraine will be part of NATO. At least that's what they're saying publicly. So I don't know if this is a slip or if this is a overprojection of what's happening. But let's listen to more like what's the internal throws.
So both NATO allies have agreed that Ukraine will become a member of our alliance, but at the same time that...
Like, do you think he's just saying that because the United States wants people to think that as an excuse for this war, as why they're helping? Or do you really... Go ahead.
It's actually really disgusting because what they're saying Ukraine will become a member of NATO eventually. Not right now. Eventually. Now, I'm asking you guys, why are they doing that? And this is what led to this conflict. We have Zelensky in Ukraine saying, oh, we want to join NATO. And you have Biden in the EU and top EU officials and NATO officials that was like, I don't know if we're going to have Ukraine join NATO. We may do it here soon. Like, what do you mean you may do it soon? Are they in or not? So what they're doing is they're provoking Russia. They're like, hey, Russia, we about to have Ukraine join NATO. You going to do anything about it, you little bitch? Oh, we about to have Ukraine join NATO. If you're going to have Ukraine join NATO, why not just accept them? They keep doing this thing where they dangle NATO in front of their face. Zelensky plays along with this because Zelensky said, oh, Ukraine's going to be a NATO state soon. Why would you say that? The only reason you would say that is to provoke Russia because that violates the Minsk Accords and their agreement to have Ukraine as a neutral state. So they're bringing this up, even though the West are not implementing and putting Ukraine in NATO, just to provoke war. That's the only reason. Literally the only reason. Go ahead.
And the guy on the left is the NATO chief. And what country is he from, Nick?
Jens Stoltenberg. Let's see, where is he from?
No, I just thought you knew. I think he's from the
Norwegian.
same...
Yeah, I just want to make sure.
Yes.
Norwegian.
Yeah, Norwegian. Yeah. And isn't Norway... Was Norway part of the helping us? Isn't Norway like the top people?
All those Scandinavian countries, all those Norwegian countries are for it. Like all of them have lost their damn mind. And right now, Lula and the global South are the only countries that are talking sense. Lula is leading and spearheading the charge. And I have a segment I'm gonna do later, where Lula's foreign policy advisor was on Democracy Now, and he would explain why we must end the conflict in Ukraine. And that's like the number one priority of Brazil, which is the exact opposite of the social democrats, those psychopaths in Sweden and Finland and Norway. These people who implement great like social programs for the people, but they largely benefit from imperialism. Well, a lot of people don't talk. Well, Bernie Sanders and the NATO left, what Nina Turner and them don't discuss enough, is the fact that Sweden is like one of the leading arm dealers in Yemen, for example. So that's what social democrats.
In the pseudo left.
Go ahead.
The pseudo left, the boutique left, they project that these are the countries that we want to model after. Because and Marianne Williamson is also part of this too, because she's fine. Domestically, as long as we're doing good domestically. That's why they don't care about if the person who's running has the top priority is foreign policy. Because in order for us to be doing, for these countries, Sweden and all these countries to be doing great and able to implement these programs and not have all this stuff is on the backs of the people in the global South. So that's why foreign policy is less important, because being into foreign policy means less personally for us, if you're talking about Norway and even the people in the United States. JB, you wanted to chime in, I think?
Yeah, I just found something that that I was looking at, because it gives a lot of context behind why Putin is feeling the way he did. And the fact is that back in the early 90s, NATO, they promised, in fact, it's out of the our article at RT. It says NATO did promise Moscow it wouldn't expand. Former German defense official tells RT. So the thing is that the fact that they promised Gorbachev that they would not expand NATO, and yet here they are expanding NATO anyway. So basically, they lied. And if you look at it, if you look it up, you'll find a lot of articles saying, "Oh, they actually didn't promise." But the thing is like they're going to deny it, yes. But look, other parties say otherwise. They said, "No, no, no. You said you weren't going to expand." And so now it's almost like a he said. It's like, wait a minute, who's correct? But then you have third parties, from Germany saying, no, yeah, they said they wouldn't expand NATO. And so all this expansion, and I was actually looking for the picture of how NATO expanded because somebody shared it recently. But it's like you have it this farther away, and then it's inching closer to you. And of course, Russia also wanted to join NATO, but guess what? They didn't want Russia to join NATO. So guess what? Russia is still on the outside. And so now they're being threatened. And so when you look at what's going on and Ukraine possibly becoming a NATO state, that means those arms are going to be placed in Ukraine. And then who are they going to be pointed at? They're going to be pointed at Russia. Why? Because really they want Russian resources. This is, look, ultimately, all this is about is money and resources, right? What does Russia have? Russia has liquefied natural gas. They have wheat fields. They have so much land, that they could do things on. So it's a lot of resources within Russia that they have in order to be able to expand their profitability from these corporations. And really, that's what's behind NATO. And so that's what's behind the United States, which is driving NATO like a vehicle, because basically all these NATO nations are really the lackeys of the United States. You kind of think about it like a bully, and he has all his lackeys around him. United States is the big bully, but his lackeys are like France and Germany and Italy, and all these other countries. And he's like, hey man, it's kind of like Biff. Remember Back to the Future? Remember Biff? Yeah. So Biff is the United States, right? And all the other dudes around him are the NATO nations. And that's basically what it is. That makes any sense.
That makes a lot of sense. Go ahead, Nick, if you want to introduce this video, sir.
Well, I will just point this up while you guys speak, because I want you guys to know that despite this pony show that they do, they usually show CJ, Europe and the world is waking up to it. That's why a lot of people are calling for peace. That's why, despite the pro-war rallies that you see in DC, that has been covered by Reuters and a lot of the corporate media, you have thousands that is marching in France and Germany that is boycotting and protesting NATO. You had a lot of people in Germany that was calling out the United States for blowing up the Nord Stream pipeline as well. So this is something that the European leaders, they're leading their people off the cliff, and they're doing nothing but projection. They are saying that Vladimir Putin is making this colossal mistake. He's losing his people. They're Russians that want to protest. Meanwhile, the exact opposite. Boris Johnson forced to resign. Emmanuel lost his majority in France. Emmanuel Macron lost his majority in France. You had Justin Trudeau, who faced protests all the time. You had Democrats who lost their majority in the House. So the people who are losing their political influence and power, and the people who really messed up, despite the narrative that comes from the media, is the West, not Russia. It's the exact opposite of what they say. Russia and Putin did exactly what they wanted to do. They drew the line in the sand. So with that said, I want to introduce this is a very short story. I didn't get a chance to do this on Nick and CJ, but it actually works really well based on the topic at hand. And we've been covering a lot of propaganda. And CJ, I know you've been hearing MSNBC, CNN, and a lot of places say stuff like Putin miscalculated because Putin has isolated himself because of this war. He's isolated himself. But this is the reality. You got BRICS that is growing in influence. You have the United States that is more isolated than possibly before. And I'm going to cover here very soon. You have NATO CJ, and they're doing a good job covering this up. NATO is in shambles because I covered NATO people that was raising concerns over the NATO plan to escalate tensions with China, and they're like, I thought this was a transatlantic alliance. Why the fuck are we in the Indian Ocean, the Pacific Ocean, doing all this nonsense, right? So now there's a shift that a lot of NATO members want to start going their own way. I'm gonna cover that here very soon. Russia's clout in the BRICS universe. Now, I'll just read just a little bit of this to understand, to show you guys how much the West fucked up here. As the 1-year anniversary of Russia's invasion of Ukraine nears, the U.S. and its allies are confronted with the harsh reality that stringent sanctions have failed to either deter Russian behavior or punish those responsible. One of the main reasons for this failure is the inability by the West to mobilize support for their sanctions policies in the rest of the world. So CJ, JB, what they're saying here is the West put all these sanctions on Russia, and other countries that do business with Russia are like, nah, not feeling it. Africa's like, nah, we're not feeling it. And you had the Russian foreign minister, you had Lavrov, who paid a visit to South Africa, where he was warmly welcomed by his counterpart, Naledi Pandor. Following their meeting, Pandora effusively thanked Lavrov for the most wonderful meeting, and she said will help strengthen the already good relations between her country and Russia as a valued partner. Now, they explained how his reception was remarkable, especially in light of concerted U.S. efforts to contain Russian influence in the African continent by seeking to realign the policy positions of major African countries, such as South Africa, with that of the U.S. on the Ukraine conflict. South Africa considered the continent Go ahead, CJ, if you want to chime in.
No, Nick, you remember that skit in Key and Peele where Obama's saying hello to everybody and all the black people, he gives them dabs and he's like, yeah, we, started at the bottom, now we here, he was like that. That's like BRICS nations versus them facing the West. So it's like the BRICS nations, they're like, hey man, what's up? Let's go. All right, dog, let's go. Okay. We going you backing me up, I'm gonna back you up. All right. But then when we look at the United States, they're like, okay, hi. Good to see you. Okay. All right, yeah, whatever. It's kind of like that. I'm sorry. It's just that it reminds me of that Key and Peele skit.
Last part I'll read on this part here. Look, ties between many of these African nations and Russia go back to the time of the Soviet Union, when Moscow was seen as standing up for African people in their struggle to free themselves from the colonial and post-colonial policies and practices of Europe. In the case of South Africa, for instance, Russian ties date back to the period before dismemberment of apartheid rule in 1994, when Russia supported the African National Congress. CJ, JB, and remember CJ when I was telling y'all, Nick and CJ, how it's hilarious how the West think they're going to propagandize Africa to forget the past?
That's exactly what they're doing. And they're trying to do it.
Yes. What liberals leave out their analysis of people like W.B. Du Bois, of the Black Panthers, and a lot of Black revolutionary leaders, is that a lot of them praise Joseph Stalin. Ooh, the boogeyman? A lot of them openly praised him. Nelson Mandela openly praised Joseph Stalin. There was white Europeans who hate Joseph Stalin. Literally, everyone else was cool with the guy. Yeah, socialists in South America loved him, right? But anyway, I digress. But they, in this paragraph in this story, they talk about the longstanding tradition of Russia to help Africans stand up against the imperial rulers. But the West think they're going to come in and convince Africa to take their side in their imperial conquest. Now I got only 2 more headlines to read. It's not a long story. Expert predicts looming economic collapse as BRICS nations unite against the dollar. So CJ, you have people who are not radical. They are starting to see this stuff. I don't know this guy politicians reading when you read his quotes, they sound very neutral. Like, I am very open. I am openly hostile to NATO and Western influence, right? I got bias to my reporting. This guy, he just seemed like he just staying facts. Like, yo, we're fucked here. de-dollarization and
but we
Go ahead,
need
CJ. Go ahead.
people. We need people that with that sort of nonchalant, that sort of dry, so people understand these are just facts. This is not. We're not coloring it with language or attitude or personality. We need that type of person, not on like Ryan Grimm level, but like a Chris Hedges. You never hear him really raise his voice or anything like that. He just kind of talks frankly and as a matter of factly. So I like that style in some instances, especially when it concerning detail. We need people like that. Absolutely.
Yeah.
JB, any final words? Go ahead.
Yeah, I'll just read this part and then I'll get JB in here because this is the only part I read on this part. He said all it would take would be for Saudi Arabia to stand up on the stage and declare we're now going to consider taking up other currencies for oil. And all of a sudden, bang, all of the countries that had to hold dollars for the last 50 years no longer have an interest in holding them. And if they all start to dump dollars, I think it would happen quickly. You have a tsunami of inflation hitting the shores of the West. Wow. So this is, I'll read the last part. And then this shows why they're really fucked. And I covered this on Nick and Night. You had Saudi Arabia. After that guy said, yo, if Saudi Arabia ever consider dropping our shit, we're fucked. Right after he said that, Saudi Arabia like, yeah, we down to. we open to join BRICS. See, this is happening, guys. So when you see the propaganda and intro video, when you see the propaganda we've been showing you the last week or so, I got another one for you guys today. It's out of desperation and not because they're winning. Last receipt I'll show you guys for this story here. Well, as Saudi Arabia is gaining influence in BRICS, you have a lot of countries looking to join BRICS. As that is happening, you have a splintering of NATO. You have the NATO people that, as we covered, who called out why we escalated in China, why we invested so much in Ukraine, even though the Ukraine not a NATO country. We have NATO that is influenced by the United States and the war hawks and war criminals. And then there's ordinary Europeans that's like, what the fuck are we doing for our country here? Right? So look at this. The U.S.-led coalition of the willing, foreshadowed the splintering of NATO. Now, CJ, JB, I'm going to ask you guys this question. Why would NATO all of a sudden start saying stuff like, all right, let's have a coalition of the willing? Because people are pushing back on their bullshit, like Turkey. Yes. So now in order to save face, instead of saying that we're divided, we like, oh, we just form a coalition of the willing. No, that shows that you motherfuckers are divided. you motherfuckers are divided. So that's my last part. I'm going to share this story. I'm going to get JB and CJ in here. But it showed that despite all the narrative you hear from Western media that Russia is being isolated, that's not true. The United States is even losing their own allies. That's why they got to do coalition the willing now. But JB, CJ, any last thoughts on this story? And I'll pass to you guys after your final thoughts.
Man, they're losing their posse. That's what it is. Look, NATO is basically United States boys. His boys are walking away. And then next thing you know, you got, Russia, China, you got all the BRICS nations that are, they're pulling up. They're like, what's up? And they're all coming up to all together. And now you got Russia going, Putin's like, hey, what you about to do now? And so, you see, the sweat coming down, France's brow, and Germany's a little fidgety. They're like, oh, I don't know, man. I don't know about all this. And then Canada's like, shit, So that's basically what it looks like,
Well,
so you can kind of see it, right?
For me, for my final words sort of on this story, it goes along with several segments Nick and I have done where I'm asking, like, is NATO losing the PR battle? And they're absolutely losing the PR battle because they're also losing the fight. They're also losing the fight. Now, like with John Kirby was being interviewed by that reporter, and he couldn't answer the question about NATO being defensive or offensive. And he was making the point that has Russia's border, has Russia moved closer to NATO, or has NATO moved closer
wait.
to Russia?
CJ.
Yeah, he was asking him that question. Go ahead, read from Jay. This is Jay, social media guy for RBN. Go ahead.
Hold up. Jay says massive anti-NATO protests in Europe. It's a fucking beautiful sight to see. By the way, this is what Wyatt Reed showed, right? This is NATO in 1998 versus NATO in 2022. You tell me, is NATO moving closer to Russia or is Russia moving closer to NATO? I didn't know that a landmass can actually inch closer to another landmass like that unless it's a tectonic plate. From what it looks like to me, it looks like the red is bleeding a little bit over further east. Now, if that's the case, then that means that you have some more hostile forces coming close to your border. So what in the hell are you going to do when you have hostile people coming closer to your house? Are you going to strap up or not? It looks like Russia has strapped up because hostile forces are coming near their home. And if hostile forces come near your house, then what are you about to do? What would you do if hostile forces came close to your house? And so that's the thing. A lot of people need to look at this from the street view. The street view is if somebody coming up close to you, then guess what you're going to do? You're going to be like, what's up? You're going to flash that gun that's in your waistband. You're like, hey, yo, what's up? What's good? So that's what Russia's doing. Because guess what? They're coming a little too close. NATO's becoming a little too familiar. And that's what it is about. Because NATO promised back in the day in 91, oh no, we're not gonna move any closer to you. Next thing you know, they lied. So guess what? Look. And now Russia's like, all right, well, shit, if you're gonna try to run a fade on me, then I guess I'm just gonna have to retaliate and show you what's good. And so that's exactly what's happening. And so that's what it looks like to me. And I'm glad Wyatt Ray showed us this, but I had to put it in those terms because people just don't realize what the fuck is going on.
I'm gonna continue with those terms. It's like a mass murderer moving next door to you, and you ain't supposed to have strap up. Mass murderer just moves in. Ted Bundy, Jeffrey Dahmer just moves in. Hey guys, I'm moving in, just letting you know I'm moving next door, and I'm coming to a house near you. Like, and all he does is just go to house to house, and they're saying, what do you mean? I'm just moving next door, and that's the United States. It's not a believable thing, but with the loss or the slipping of unipolar world, moving to a multipolar world. I mean, this is only obvious with the enforceable arm of the military industrial complex when you're talking about imperialism on all shores. NATO's the place, so it's intertwined. It's when you're seeing the collapse of an empire. What their army is doing and what the army is doing it for makes a difference. And our army is literally not doing anything about freedom and help. Is literally just being used to extract resources. So, and they don't have any concern with winning any wars. And that's the sign of a failing nation.